can move on and talk about Leeds United, Pete. Now, of course, promotion hangs in the balance for them. It's looking quite tense, really, at Elland Road. What does it mean for their finances for the following season, irrespective of whether they are in the Championship or the Premier League?
Yeah, it's a major blow to their finances. There's no doubt about that. We saw their accounts, which were released in April, didn't make for great reading. Obviously, missing out in the Premier League hurts your revenue streams as well. So staying in the Championship, you don't get as much money. Your parachute payments are less in the second year as well, following the first year after relegation from the Premier League. And obviously, we know about those repayments they've got to play for players that to all these other clubs as well. And if those clubs come calling for that money, Leeds are going to be out of pocket by quite a lot. So, yeah, it's sort of worrying times for Leeds, because I think they had banked on winning promotion straight back to the Premier League, and that would help solve a lot of their financial issues and everything else. So if they don't go up via the playoffs, or whether automatically, it's still mathematically possible that they could do, but it just looks like they've hit a bit of a mental block in this pursuit of promotion to the Premier League as well. And yeah, it's going to have massive effects on the club financially going forward, because there's no doubt players will have to be sold to try and balance the books. And again, that sets you back on the pitch if they do lose some of their top players, because obviously Leeds United, as I said, were planning on winning promotion back. That's why they brought Daniel Farke in. He's a serial promotion winner, and all plans were made for them to be back in the Premier League. But it's still possible. But yeah, really uncertain, worrying times for Leeds, because, as I said, financially it's going to have a massive effect on them if they don't get back to the Premier League.
Paul, what are your thoughts? It sounds like Daniel Farke is set to stay as manager regardless about promotion. Is he the right man at Elland Road? Is he the right man to take the club up? Are you confident in him? Or actually, after this season, what's the general consensus among Leeds fans?
Listen, I think they've had a good season. I think they've come up against two very good teams in Leicester and Ipswich. And we said before about the amount of points that have been accrued over the season in the Championship. I think this season, more so than ever, teams averaging over 2 points a game. Leicester and Ipswich, they just haven't gone away all season. I mean, Leicester have the opportunity to break their own record with games won, opportunity to get through the 100 points mark, and they're setting records left, right and centre as they're winning the Championship. So that shows the barrier, the bar that's been set. And Ipswich, I mean, you've got to give Kieran McKenna and Ipswich so much credit for the way that they've handled themselves this season. They only lost once at home all season, and that was to Leeds, coincidentally. But actually, Leeds is in different form before Christmas. They put themselves in the bracket just after Christmas with that incredible run that they went on, and then obviously fell away at the wrong time. I think they're giving themselves too much to do. In all honesty, I cannot see Ipswich losing at home on the final day to Huddersfield. Huddersfield need a 16, 17 goal swing, something like that, to stay in the Championship. So for me, they're all but relegated. As soon as Ipswich go 1-0 up there, and then it's game over, it's done. The worrying thing for me for Leeds is they don't want to be in the playoffs. You look at the other teams in that league, Southampton, Norwich, West Brom and Hull all potentially could be in the playoffs. And every single one of those teams will be delighted to be in the playoffs. Leeds won't. So it's the mentality, it's the shift. It's what he's got to get out of his players again. You know, for Leeds, it'll be a big come down, it'll be a big disappointment to be in the playoffs. Whereas the teams that they're coming up against will be absolutely delighted to have got there. Daniel Farke, the right man, I think he's proved this year he is. I think he's proved this year. I think his acquisitions with Connor Roberts in the January window, Joe Rodon at the beginning, Ampadu, the emergence of Archie Gray, the way that the team's played this season at times, and to finish third, in all honesty, I think that's probably the right order when you look at the way that the teams have performed this year, Leicester, Ipswich and Leeds. That's probably a fair representation. An opportunity at the start of the season to finish third and maybe finish second. A lot of Leeds fans would have taken that. It was very difficult falling out of the Premier League last year. Lost a lot of players, whether it be on loans or permanents. The manager had to rebuild his squad. Let's not forget at the start of the season, Willian Yonto was refusing to play, didn't want to be there, wanted to leave the club, turned his attitude and his performances around. The way that he's got Somerville playing in the Championship this season. Piro and Rutter, they've been inconsistent, but at times they've looked good. Archie Gray, Rodon, Ampadu, they've been excellent. And I think the signs there this season, there's absolutely no question that he should be there next season if they're not in the Premiership to have another go at getting out of the Championship. Or if they are in the Premiership through the playoffs, 1,000,000% he stays.
Paul, are you not concerned about some of those big names you mentioned there with Somerville and Nyonto that they're going to go, or at least they're going to, I mean, you said before they're going to have bids tested. What's the likelihood that they will lose, say,
if they're in the Championship, they go. It's as simple as that. because, you know, Pete told us about and we spoke about the financial situation at Leeds, and it's well documented. The figures are there for all to see. There's unpaid transfer fees and there's debt. That leads to one thing: selling players. And the assets that they've got in Somerville, listen, in Dan James as well, in Willian Yonto, in others. I'd like to think they can keep hold of Archie Gray should he want to stay and be part of his development. But there is a lot of quality in that squad. They've got a lot of players that are out on loan that still hold value, the likes of Jack Harrison, etc., that can come into that squad and then they can be sold and the money can be replenished back into that side. But it's almost impossible. Well, it is when you stack up the figures, you look at the figures, you look at the debt, you look at the unpaid transfer fees. It's a physical impossibility that they cannot hold on to these players in the Championship. The Premiership's a different world. The financial revenue that it brings and the situation of the Premier League with the media money, the TV money, everything else, the influx of money that comes from the Premier League gives Leeds United a lifeline to keep hold of those players. A Championship season, it's going to be impossible for Leeds to keep hold of those players once they've posted books like that.
Pete, it sounds like a former midfielder actually at Elland Road is set potentially for a return to the Championship or Premier League. Is that likely? Could we see Calvin Phillips move if they don't manage to get promoted?
Obviously, for ideal scenario for Leeds would be to have Calvin Phillips back in the Premier League. That would tick a lot of boxes. Obviously, he's had a really unhappy time of it of late, Calvin Phillips, but we know what he can produce because that's helped him win that big money move to Manchester City with all those impressive performances for Leeds and for England. I think he was England's Player of the Year, wasn't he, during the Euros that year? So he's definitely got it in him. The move to Man City hasn't worked out. He's not played enough football, and then obviously went to West Ham hoping to relaunch his career really and get back on track, but it's been a bit of a disaster in all honesty for him, and it looks like he's going to miss out on the Euros this summer for England, which you wouldn't have imagined 12 to 18 months ago that Calvin Phillips would miss out. So I think he's going to have to sit down this summer, evaluate his future. He doesn't have a future at Man City, that's pretty clear. But Man City will be looking to recoup some of that money that they paid for him, over 40 million when they signed him from Leeds. But I don't see anybody getting anywhere near that price tag right now. I don't think anybody would be willing to pay it. I can't see West Ham turning that loan move into permanent either due to what's happened during this loan deal. So, yeah, big summer ahead for Calvin Phillips. He needs to get his head down, get fit. If Leeds are in the Championship, I don't see how Leeds can afford a deal for Calvin Phillips, and I'm not sure, even though Calvin Phillips loves Leeds United, whether he would be willing to drop down to the Championship again. So he sees himself as a Premier League player now, and or maybe even interest from abroad. There was a bit of interest in him in the January window before he ended up going to West Ham. So he's at a bit of a crossroads, I think, in his career, Calvin Phillips. Obviously, I think if the option was there to go back to Leeds in the Premier League, he would definitely take it. But I just think financially, his wage packet, transfer fee, if what Man City will be looking for him, I think probably the only option available to Calvin Phillips this summer is potentially another loan move, because I don't see anybody paying 30 plus million for him or whatever. So I think he'll have to sit there and evaluate his options. And at this rate, he might have to even go abroad to kickstart his career again, because it's just been faltering for the last 12 months at Man City, and now the West Ham move hasn't worked out either. So yeah, you got to feel for the player, because I think on his day he's still a top quality midfielder, but just hasn't worked out for him recently.
You've just watched a segment from Football Insider's brand new podcast, The Inside Track, with me, Lewis Pearce, alongside the guests on the show. Thanks very much for tuning in. Please do give the video a like, comment your thoughts on the topic, and feel free to share on your social media pages. If you want to listen to the full podcast episode, click the link in the description below. Keep your eyes peeled for plenty more content and exclusives here on The Inside Track.